Today, we're diving into a case that really forced everyone to look hard at how modern myths can take root. We're talking about the 2014 Slender Man Stabbing in Waukesha, Wisconsin.
It's a chilling story. Not your typical crime motivators here. This was an act driven, seemingly, by an online horror character.
Exactly, and it remains such a critical case study, doesn't it? It sort of maps out how the internet can, well, blur that line between a shared story, something fictional, and a shared psychosis.
Right. The character, Slender Man, obviously wasn't real, but the belief in him, that became dangerously real for two young girls. Real enough to make them try to kill their friend.
Okay, so let's really unpack this. Our goal here is to trace this figure back to its origins, understand how this online creation by someone called Victor Surge became the absolute focus of a lethal delusion for these two girls.
And crucially, how their victim, Peyton Leutner, managed to survive something so brutal, 19 stab wounds.
Yeah. We're drawing directly from, detailed accounts of how the myth started, the psychological reports on the Omakers, the crime itself, and the whole legal tangle afterward.
We're really trying to get at that intersection of narrative power, the power of a story, and mental vulnerability. Why this particular myth became the framework for such a tragedy.
So to get the motive, we first need to understand the monster itself. Let's go back to 2009. Where did Slender Man come from?
It all kicked off on a website called Something Awful. They had this forum contest, basically, to create a paranormal image.
Just a creative challenge.
Yeah, exactly. And a user named Eric Knudsen, using the handle Victor Surge, he posted these images, and they won. They were unsettling.
And that original look was deceptively simple, but really effective, right? This tall, faceless man in a dark suit, just sort of lurking in the background of old black and white photos, usually with children nearby.
Yes. And the internet being what it is, it hates a void. The community just jumped on it immediately. People started writing stories, creating fake documents, alleged sightings, even videos.
So it grew organically.
Totally. He became this figure who haunted forests, stalked kids, basically represented this kind of vague, omnipresent threat, just out of sight.
For almost everyone, this was just online fiction, right? A spooky meme, part of that whole creepypasta internet horror culture.
Right. Millions saw it that way. But here's where the crucial shift happens. That leap from a harmless, creepy story to an actual operable delusion in these specific young minds.
What made Slender Man different?
Well, the sources suggest its power was in its vagueness. It was adaptable. For the attackers, it wasn't just a scary story someone wrote. It morphed into something immediate, something demanding.
That's a real presence.
Exactly. A presence, even a sort of god, that they believed could genuinely harm their families. And critically, an entity that promised something access to his mansion, but only if they committed this terrible act.
So the myth provided not just a figure, but a task, a location, a whole belief system.
And that built the bridge from the digital world to this lethal plan in Waukesha, Wisconsin. And at the center, you have three 12-year-old girls.
Right. Morgan Geyser and Peyton Leutner. They were best friends, apparently inseparable since 4th grade.
And then there was Anissa Weir. She was described as quieter, maybe a bit shy, but she found common ground with Morgan over this shared fascination with the darker side of the internet, creepypasta sites specifically.
And Peyton, who would become the victim, she just saw it as a story. Like, her friends were just really into this creepy character.
Yeah, for Peyton, it seems it was just that story, maybe a bit weird, but ultimately fantasy. But for Morgan and Anissa, that line just dissolved.
It became a shared reality for them.
A full-blown shared belief system. Anissa definitely seemed convinced Slender Man was real, that he was watching them. But Morgan, her belief went much deeper. And the psychological reports later confirmed she was showing signs of serious underlying mental illness even before this.
So the shared belief fueled her existing condition.
It seems so. It compounded her psychosis. They genuinely believed Slender Man had a mansion nearby, in the woods, that he demanded a sacrifice to prove they were worthy. And the threat was clear. If they didn't do it, he'd hurt their families.
And that belief system is what turned the fantasy into, well, a concrete, horrific plan. They decided they had to kill Peyton to prove their loyalty.
The depth of the delusion is just staggering when you look at the next step. The goal wasn't just the murder, it was what came after. They planned to kill Peyton, hide her body, and then literally walk.
Walk where?
Hundreds of kilometers, they thought, to find this fictional mansion in the Nicolet National Forest and meet Slender Man.
Based on nothing, just the myth.
Based entirely on the myth. Yeah, the premeditation involved. It's just incredibly hard to grasp. Two 12-year-olds planning this whole thing, carrying a kitchen knife for their friend.
And the attack itself, it almost happened the night before, didn't it? May 30th, 2014, Morgan's birthday sleepover.
That's right. They planned to do it while Peyton slept. But Morgan, during later questioning, she said something like she wanted to give her one more morning.
Wow. A moment of hesitation or just delaying.
It's hard to say for sure. Maybe a flicker of the real child underneath the delusion. But whatever it was, it didn't last. The delusion took full control the next day, May 31st.
And they acted normally that morning, went to a park.
Completely normal, apparently. Went to David's Park, played on the swings. Then they suggested a walk in the woods. The excuse was playing hide and seek.
And they led Peyton deeper into the woods.
Yes, until they reached this secluded clearing. And that's where it happened. Anissa reportedly gave Morgan the final instruction. Morgan later recounted it as, "Go ballistic. Go crazy."
And she did 19 times with the knife.
19 times.
Yep.
And afterwards, their reaction wasn't panic. It was this sort of clinical detachment that came straight from their fantasy world.
What did they do?
They just told Peyton, who was bleeding profusely, to lie down and be quiet. They seemed to assume she would die, and then they just walked away. Started their journey to find the Slender Man mansion.
Leaving her for dead.
Leaving her for dead. The horror of that is immense. But then you have Peyton's survival story, which is just genuinely staggering.
It's almost unbelievable. How did she survive that?
Pure resilience, it seems. I mean, punctured lungs, damage to her liver, stomach, other organs. Yet she refused to die there. She started crawling.
Crawling out of a woods.
Out of the woods, pressing on her wounds apparently, until somehow she made it to a nearby bike path.
And someone found her.
Yes, a cyclist out for his morning ride saw her, called 911 immediately. That call saved her life. The doctors later said one of those wounds missed her heart by millimeters. Just millimeters.
Truly miraculous survival. And while she's fighting for her life, Morgan and Anissa are... where? Still walking.
Still walking. They were found hours later, near a highway, covered in dirt, still carrying the knife in a backpack. And the police reports describe them as being strangely calm.
Still focused on the fantasy.
Completely. Still trying to get to the Nicollet National Forest, hundreds of miles away, to find Slender Man.
And when they were questioned, did the motive become clear? Did they explain why?
Oh, absolutely. And it showed the absolute grip of the delusion. Morgan apparently said, referencing Slender Man, "He watches us. He can read our minds. We had to do it."
And Anissa?
Anissa backed it up. She claimed, if we didn't, he would hurt our families. There was no question in their minds, it seems, that this was necessary.
Which brings us to the really complex legal side of this. How does the justice system even begin to process something like this? Two 12-year-olds attempted murder, but driven by a belief in a fictional monster.
Well, the psychological evaluations became absolutely key. Morgan, who carried out the stabbing, was diagnosed with early-onset schizophrenia.
Schizophrenia at that age.
Yes. And significantly, there was a family history. Her father also had the illness. And Morgan herself reported seeing things, like shadow figures, even before she ever heard about Slender Man.
So the myth didn't cause the illness.
Exactly. It seems the myth provided a structure, a dangerous framework, for a psychosis that was already developing. It gave the delusions a focus.
Okay, that explains Morgan's state. But what about Anissa? The shared delusion aspect is legally very tricky, isn't it? How did they sort that out?
It is tricky. Anissa was diagnosed with something called shared delusional disorder, or folie à deux. She genuinely believed in Slender Man too, but her belief system was seen as heavily dependent on Morgan's more profound psychosis. Morgan confirmed the reality for her, essentially.
So the court recognized that neither girl was fully capable of understanding reality at the time.
That was the core finding. Due to severe mental illness, they were medically unable to appreciate the wrongfulness of their actions. The crime wasn't driven by malice in the legal sense, but by this powerful shared delusion.
So they were initially charged as adults, which caused a lot of public debate.
A huge debate. But ultimately, after pleading guilty to attempted homicide charges, both girls were found not guilty by reason of insanity.
And the sentences reflected their different diagnoses?
Yes. Morgan received the longer sentence, 40 years in a state mental health institution. Anissa was sentenced to 25 years, and Anissa was actually released under supervision back in 2021.
Which shows the court did differentiate between the leader, perhaps, and the follower in the delusion.
Or at least the depth and nature of their respective illnesses and potential for treatment and recovery, yes.
Throughout all of this, the sources always emphasize Peyton Leutner's incredible strength. How did she process what happened? What did she say years later?
Her perspective is pretty profound, especially given her age at the time. Years later, she actually said she had forgiven them.
Forgiven them?
Yes, stated she didn't hold hate for them, but also made it clear she would never forget what happened. The physical recovery was obviously intense, multiple surgeries, but emotionally, she seems to have found a way forward.
So looking at the bigger picture, what was the fallout from this case? It must have sent ripples through, well, the online world at least.
Oh, definitely. It forced a real confrontation with how much influence online content can have, especially on young, maybe vulnerable minds.
Were there actual changes made?
Yes, some tangible things happened. After the stabbing, many of those creepypasta websites and forums, they started adding very clear disclaimers, stating explicitly, this is fiction, this is not real.
A direct response, acknowledging the potential for misinterpretation.
Exactly. A recognition, perhaps, that those lines between fantasy and reality, the lines these girls tragically crossed, needed to be drawn more clearly by the content creators themselves.
And really, the final word should probably go to Peyton Leutner, the survivor.
I agree. After everything she went through, her recovery, moving on with her life, she gives this really powerful statement. She said, "I've moved on. I just want to be known as a survivor."
That says it all, really.
It really does. It encapsulates resilience. Ultimately, this whole case, when you look at the sources, it feels less about an internet monster causing harm and more about, well, about what happens when a fictional world offers the perfect, terrible template for someone grappling with severe mental illness.
And the boundaries just aren't there or aren't seen.
Right. And it leaves you thinking, doesn't it, about how vigilant we need to be when these digital narratives stop being just stories and start feeling like commands, especially when they offer comfort or purpose or instructions to minds that are desperately seeking them.